Goyanese inhabitant. Also, I want to greet Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, better known as AGRA. I know she will replace by her Vice President, Professor Boga. I would like to underscore that AGRA and IICA, both institutions, we are strengthening ties, thinking in improving the quality of life of farmers, I insist, in both continents. President Kalibata and his Vice President Boga are leading the organization efforts jointly with public and private partners to ensure a food secure and prosperous Africa. Finally, it is an honor to recognize Professor Ratan Lal, someone who has many titles and credentials, but I would like to recognize as one of the most important scientists in the world in the area of soils and sustainable development, but also a goodwill ambassador of IICA. It is a real honor to be gathered here to celebrate the launch of Living Soils Initiative in Africa, a visionary collaboration led by AGRA with the support of IICA. This event marks a significant milestone in our journey towards soil restoration, mitigating climate crisis, and enhancing food security in the region. Let me remind, first of all, that Africa and South America were connected as part of the supercontinent called Pangaea, which existed approximately 300 million years ago until it began to break apart during the Jurassic period. Nonetheless, the minimum distance between both continents, it is just 2,500 kilometers. The question is, what do we have in common, between Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean in terms of agricultural development? In some cases, we have in common similar ecosystems related with tropical rainforests, savannas. Also, we share biodiversity, the relative importance of smallholder farming, but also some unresolved problems mainly associated with soil degradation. So today we come together with a clear purpose to recognize the fundamental importance of agriculture in mitigating the effects of climate change and building a more sustainable and resilient food systems. The Living Soils Initiative, successfully implemented in the Americas, has generated significant benefits for our countries, such as providing a strategic vision for our food systems, implementing protocols to strengthen soil health and ecosystem services. Over the past years, we have been actively involved in key global conferences, such as the 2021 UN Food System Summit, in which Dr. Kalibata played a significant role as a special envoy of the UN Secretary General, and the United Nations Climate Change Conferences, better known as COP. At these global platforms, we have firmly advocated for the importance of strengthening our productive systems and the urgent need to promote sustainable and regenerative practices, as well as to seek financial mechanism for this transition. Our participation in these summits has highlighted the vital role of agriculture in food and environmental security. Likewise, it has allowed to share experiences and knowledge in the development of sustainable agriculture practices, highlighting the importance of international collaboration and South-South cooperation to achieve our common goals of climate change mitigation and adaptation. These spaces have provided with the opportunity to connect with other key stakeholders globally and strengthen strategic alliances for the benefit of our productive systems and global food security. This bold step allows us to also advance with these agriculture foundations in the African continent, promoting the restoration of degraded lands, the dissemination of regenerative agriculture practices, and the advancement of the health of our soils. In this context, it is essential to highlight the crucial role played by farmers and agriculture communities in the successful implementation of this initiative. Their experience, knowledge, and dedication are fundamental to achieving the goals that have been established. I would like to underscore that one of the fundamental pillars of living soils, once again, is South-South cooperation between Latin America and Africa. This collaboration provides us with a unique opportunity to share successful experiences, transfer innovative technologies, and strengthen our collective capacities to address the environmental and climate challenges we face. Our main objective is to build bridges between countries in Latin America and the Caribbean and Africa, focused on supporting smallholder farmers in adapting and mitigating the effects of climate change, as well as improving the productivity and resilience of our African agricultural systems. We are committed to working together to build a more prosperous and equitable future for all, where the health of our soils and food security are fundamental priorities. In conclusion, the Living Soils Initiative in Africa represents a unique opportunity to promote collaboration, innovation, and sustainable development in the agriculture sector. I thank everyone present for their commitment and dedication to this important cause. Together, we can achieve a lasting positive impact and build a better world for future generations. In the context of this strategic alliance between Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean, let me emphasize the role that Brazil can play, since they have developed a much better future developing the cerrados, adopting technology that can be transferred to savannas. So time is ripe to transfer this technology, always keeping in mind that we can improve the quality of life for our small farmers and trying to create a more prosperous rural life in Africa and also in Latin America and the Caribbean. Without taking care of the soils, we cannot think in the future of agriculture. So this is a historic day, and myself as a Director General of IICA, I am strongly committed to this initiative. Thank you very much.
Philip, you are mute.
My apologies. Thank you, Dr. Otero. As Dr. Otero said, Agnes Kalibata, the president of the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, could not be with us today, but we are honored to have Vice President of AGRA, Professor Hamadi Idi Boga, a former principal secretary of agriculture in Kenya, to speak to us on behalf of AGRA. Professor Boga?
The connection is okay, Professor Boga?
Professor Boga, we may have to. Professor Boga, we are going to move to the president. Hopefully, you can the connection. We cannot hear you at the moment. Let's move to the president of the Cooperative Republic of Africa, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali. Dr. Ali holds a PhD in urban and regional planning. He became a member of the Guyana National Assembly in 2006 and has served a number of capacities. He also has served as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee and co-chairman of the Economic Services Committee in the Parliament. President Ali, the floor is yours.
Philip, we do have a problem before with our colleague from Agra because there is a tremendous storm in his city, and the connectivity seems to have a big problem. And in the case of the president of Guyana, they are connected, but they were waiting for the president to arrive, and looks like he didn't yet. Then I will suggest to you that we go ahead with the agenda and we go back to the president as soon as they let us know that he arrived.
Okay.
And we give the floor to him after that, okay?
Okay, thank you. We will then move to our distinguished ministers of agriculture who have joined us. We have 4 from in Africa. We're going to start with Abubakar Kyari, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Food Security of Nigeria. Mr. Kyari, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. But I think just to put some records straight, I'm Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security. I presume Senator Kyari is not joining. I'm the one, joining for this program. I think I sent a message to the panel, to the admin earlier to indicate my joining the program.
Okay. My apologies. Go right.
Is okay.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
So thank you very much. First, let me commend the organizers, and in particular IICA, for making is possible. And I listened to the president, Manuel Otero. Definitely all the key points he has mentioned in terms of sharing experience, collective capabilities and capacities, and collaborations. I think these are the key ingredients we need to make this very wonderful and fantastic initiative, visible and possible. Living soil signifies so many things. So long as we are alive on this planet, we need living soil. And I think to us here in Nigeria, this resonates very well with us. Where commonly we talk about soil as Mother Earth to show its nourishing, nurturing, and life-giving properties. As a way of contribution, I would like to say that we also recognize the invaluable role of soil to increasing productivity of our farmers and therefore contributing to food security. At the moment, we are dealing with a very serious food crisis. And of course, that cannot also be divorced from the challenges of poor soil that our farmers are grappling with. And so to have this program and to learn from it and to mainstream it into what we do, I think is sine qua non for our collective success in terms of food security, which for all intent and purpose, we can say is not just within the boundary of Nigeria, but has become something of a global concern. Now, for us here, definitely we have a very critical mandate. The President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, has mandated us to do all we can to ensure that we focus on restoring the vitality of soil and its role in our smallholder agriculture, farming, and other farming activities. And for us in the ministry, we are definitely looking at promoting conservation agriculture technology among our farmers through linkages with our states, that's the subnationals, where they have agricultural development programs that we link up with to ensure that these technologies get down to the farmers. We also are conducting national soil survey and soil fertility mapping so that we are able to have detailed soil map that tells us where problem soils are with a view to having programs that can also mitigate them. But of note is the fact that we also have realized the important role of agroforestry. And I think we are having right now the establishment of about 165 hectares of integrated farm on agroforestry with a view to supporting the restoration and conservation of our degraded soils. We are also having demonstration farms because for some time in the transition between removal of forestry from agriculture in Nigeria to the Federal Ministry of Environment, I think we tend to have lost some grounds around that area. And that is why we are promoting this agroforestry currently. Now, the other aspect is that soil health and climate issues require synergy. And I think the Nigerian Meteorological Agency and our ministry with the Ministry of Environment are working very seriously. And I think we just unveiled some documents that showed exactly what our next patterns are as a way of guiding the oncoming rainy season in Nigeria. And so also we have the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, that has given some prediction and early warning to our farmers. But of note, and what we intend to do in the coming months, is the fact that we are introducing National Farmer Soil Health Card Scheme to enable us guide our farmers to know what the recommended crop-specific fertilization is for their farms. We believe this will checkmate the blanket application of fertilizer and the attendant soil poisoning, land degradation, and carbon emission from just arbitrary use of fertilizer. We consider this very important and significant, and we are working so that before the end of this year, our president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, will be able to launch that as a national program for Nigeria. But let me conclude by saying that we are ready for collaboration and partnership. And I think, like I said, the key word is the fact that we need to share experience. Those that have successfully, tamed some of these problem soils, we have a lot to share, and we are more than ready to accept lessons from all of these capabilities. And to also say we are ready and open for partnership as we work together to restore the dignity of soil as the habitat of successful agricultural practices. Thank you for listening, and I say good evening to all of you.
Thank you. You have started us off with some very important issues in terms of technology, in terms of agroforestry, and also interesting to learn about your program or initiative to reduce fertilizer usage or reduce the overuse of fertilizer on many soils in Nigeria. Next, we have with us Ayasu Elias, Minister of Agriculture in Ethiopia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me and bringing me on board. I was trying to put this video on, but for some reason the video is not on. Apologies for that. So I'm bringing greetings to all of you from Ethiopian Ministry of Agriculture. My name is Professor Ayasu Elias. I'm Professor of Soil Science and currently Minister of State of Agriculture, especially responsible for the natural resources management sector. When it comes to soils, Ethiopia has been and is grappling with a number of challenges. The most important challenge, which it shares with other African countries, especially East African countries, is soil erosion by running water or soil erosion by water. Because of the topographic position and because of the alarming rates of deforestation and loss of vegetative cover of the soil, soil erosion has taken its toll over the past many decades, in fact centuries, and the landscape of the country, especially in the highlands of Ethiopia, has been characterized as gullies and terribly degraded landscape. That's number one. Number two, we are related to this soil erosion. There is loss of nutrients and organic matter depletion. The nutrients, major nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, balances are terribly negative in the range of something like 80 kgs per hectare for nitrogen, for example, on average. But for phosphorus, it's in the range of 10 to 15 kgs per hectare, and potassium is a bit lower. No, potassium is also around 20, 25 kgs per hectare on average. Organic matter depletion is also huge. As you all know, for agricultural soils, the optimum level of soil organic carbon must be about 4%. And the average for Ethiopia highlands is less than 2%. So that's terribly affecting soil biological diversity and biological activity, and soil health is at stake. And that is, again, related to erosion that removes fine particles as well as the rooting depths, loss of rooting depths of the soil. Number three, we have this problem of soil acidity. In the highlands of Ethiopia, something like 7.5 million agriculturally productive soils have been very much affected by soil acidity. And related to that, in some areas, we have aluminum toxicity in the rhizosphere. This is in the western half of the country, where we have the red, well-weathered and well-drained soils that are very much leaching soils. And amending these soils and managing these soils is a critical policy agenda these days. The other soil health problem is salt-affected soils or saline alkaline soils. These are very much extensive areas of salt-affected soils are found in the drier and lowland areas, where irrigated farming has been practiced for some decades. And naturally, evapotranspiration is high, and the lithology of that area contains already salt. And with inappropriate irrigation practices, such as furrow flood irrigation, salinity has grown extensively in these areas. And we have roughly 11 million hectares that are at the moment salt affected. The other soil health related problem is vertisols. Vertisols are extensive in the central highland part of the country, as well as in the western lowlands, bordering with Sudan. These soils are, as many of you know, are chemically good soils, fertile soils, rich in clays, but they are waterlogged, and therefore drainage is a serious problem. And we could not put them to productive use because we are grappling with drainage facilities. Having faced with these challenges, the Ethiopian government and people have been investing in addressing these issues. For example, to address soil erosion, we have been promoting what we call a community-based natural resource management, where community watershed, community users are entitled to protect the landscape they are working on. Something like 1,000 or 1,500 hectares of land, degraded land, is given to watershed communities on usufruct rights with security of ownership, so that they construct bench terraces, hillside terraces, gully rehabilitation measures with assistance of flagship programs supported by international financiers such as the World Bank, the WFP, and the IFAD program. So soil water conservation, at the moment, annually, we are trying to rehabilitate something like 2.5 million hectares. And so far, out of the 54 million degraded highland landscapes, we have managed to rehabilitate 28 million hectares. And this is well documented, and I think we are in the process of publishing this. This is a great achievement. Allied to this, we are also promoting one of the major, maybe the largest afforestation program in Africa. We call them the Green Legacy Initiative, which focuses on agroforestry as well as community woodlot plantations to provide cover for the soil, as well as providing multiple functions, such as provision of fruits and fodder for animals, fruit for people, and wood also for the household. So that's one of the major interventions that we are making as a government and people. The second initiative that has been running over the past maybe 10 years is increased use of external nutrients. Fertilizer use has been very low for African standard. Like we used to have 20 kg, 28 kg nutrient per hectare, maybe 15 years ago. But now we reached the 53 kg per hectare. And volume of importation has also grown to about 2 million tons of DAP and urea fertilizers. And the distribution is aggressively done so that farmers with conservation with soil water conservation, with afforestation and agroforestry, farmers can also use this fertilizer so that the nutrient mining, nutrient depletion can be curbed. So import fertilizer use among farmers is a major issue. I made a very reconnaissance kind of survey recently, and we found out that 94% of the Ethiopian farmers are now using chemical fertilizers, which is amazing. But combined to this, we are also promoting composting and conservation agriculture, assisted with international partners and development partners. This is also taking root, but it's still a long way to go. So combined use of organic and inorganic fertilizers is our strategy. The fourth strategy that we are following is acid soil amendment. I was in Brazil, Cerrado woodland ecosystem, learning the experiences of Embrapa in collaboration with the Agency for Brazilian Cooperation. We learned amazing things that the Latin American country, Brazil, has done in terms of rehabilitating this highly weathered, highly acidified oxysoils of the Cerrado woodland. And we wanted to learn and copy some experiences to amend the 7.5 million hectares of acidified soils in the Ethiopian highlands. They have followed various approaches such as applying lime, but at the same time, the chemical methods such as BioRed and others. So those are some of. Am I out of time?
You're mute, Philip. You're mute, Philip.
Am I out of time?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Professor Elisa, we need to take a break here and pause here at the moment, and we'll come back to the agriculture ministers. Thank you for your remarks. You've laid out not only some of the challenges that you have in Ethiopia and across sub-Saharan Africa with soil erosion and so forth, but also some of the solutions. We want to pause for our special guest, President Mohammed Irfan Ali, of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And President Ali is also the president of CARICOM, the Caribbean community. Thank you, Mr. President, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank IICA and AGRA for the honor of participating in this virtual launch of the Living Soils Initiative. The source of life is a sacred gift entrusted to us by the divine. As it is written in Psalm 104:14, He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. End of quote. Indeed, the soil sustains us, nourishes us, and provides the foundation upon which all life thrives. Just as we are called to be stewards of the earth, so too are we called to cherish and protect the soil, for it is the very essence of our existence. I would like to situate this event, however, in the larger context of what I believe is the prospects of Africa's ascension in global affairs. I've said it before, and I will repeat it. Africa's hour has arrived. I sincerely believe that the next few decades will belong to Africa. For centuries, Africa was colonized and plundered for her resources. Despite this history, Africa remains a continent rich in natural resources. According to the United Nations Environmental Programme, Africa possesses 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 8% of the world's natural gas, 40% of the world's gold, 90% of the world's chromium and platinum, the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium. But when I speak about a new transformative era in Africa, I'm referring not simply to its mineral potential, but to its agricultural and environmental potential. As is known, Africa is also home to 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land and 10% of the planet's internal renewable freshwater resources. With its expansive arable lands and abundant freshwater resources, Africa has the unquestionable potential to emerge as a significant player in global food supply chains. With careful investments in infrastructure, technology, and sustainable farming practices, African nations can harness this potential to not only meet their own food security needs, but also contribute substantially to addressing global food needs. Africa's rich agricultural diversity and favorable climatic condition position it as a key player in feeding the world's population. There is no reason why annual food import bill should be what it is, more than 60 billion US dollars. Africa has the potential to become a major food frontier. Already, some 35% of the continent's GDP stems from agriculture. The continent's rich traditions in agriculture can become a stepping stone towards the goal of becoming a major global food supplier. Africa also has the potential to spearhead global leadership in combating climate change through proactive measures aimed at conserving its forests and mitigating land degradation. As home to some of the world's most biodiverse and carbon-rich ecosystems, including the Congo Basin and the African tropical forests, the continent plays a crucial role in sequestering carbon and regulating the Earth's climate. For example, Central Africa's forests store more than 50,000 tons of carbon per square kilometers. Africa's forests store about 25% of the world's forest carbon. Therefore, by adopting sustainable forestry practices, promoting reforestation efforts, and adopting land management strategies, including reducing land degradation that prioritize conservation and restoration, African nations can significantly contribute to global efforts to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and preserve critical ecosystems. Yet, Africa faces serious threats from land degradation, including desertification. Some estimates put land degradation and desertification affecting as much as 45% of all lands on the continent. This poses a real threat to efforts to combat climate change and enhance Africa's food security. In Africa, soil health and fertility are declining, causing problems for farming, food, jobs, and environment. This decline makes it hard for soil to benefit from things like fertilizers and better seeds, leading to low crop yields. It also makes small farmers and communities more vulnerable to climate change. It is in this context that the Living Soils Initiative holds immense significance for Africa. This initiative offers an approach to addressing key environmental agricultural challenges facing the continent by focusing on regenerative agricultural practices that prioritize soil health and biodiversity. This initiative aims to combat land degradation, enhance food security, and build resilience to climate change. In Africa, where a large proportion of the population depends on agriculture for their livelihoods, and where soil degradation threatens the productivity of farmlands, the Living Soils Initiative represents a transformative opportunity. By promoting practices such as agroforestry, cover cropping, composting, and conservation agriculture, this initiative not only imposes soil fertility and water retention, but also mitigates greenhouse gas emissions and enhances ecosystem services. I therefore commend the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, along with the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, for piloting this important initiative. It is important, however, for all concerned to appreciate that the success of such an initiative revolves around ensuring economic sovereignty of Africa. Its nations and its people are respected. The key to Africa's success is to create plans to arrest and reverse land degradation. This involves focusing on understanding and managing soil better, especially by examining things like soil health and productivity over time. Guyana's own experience suggests that projects should be inclusive. First, they should focus on supporting small farmers in participating countries. Second, the active involvement of women and youths should be integral in these projects. Women and youth constitute significant portions of the agriculture workforce in many communities. By ensuring their participation, projects can benefit from diverse perspectives, knowledge, and skills, ultimately leading to more sustainable and inclusive outcomes. Projects should also promote climate-resilient agriculture. Climate-resilient agriculture incorporates practices and technologies that help farmers adapt to changing climatic conditions, such as extreme weather events, droughts, and shifts in rainfall patterns. By implementing climate-resilient agriculture techniques, such as conservation agriculture, agroforestry, and water-efficient irrigation systems, projects can enhance the resilience of agricultural systems to climate-related risks. This not only protects against further land degradation, but also ensures the sustainability of agricultural productivity in the face of increasingly unpredictable climate dynamics. I encourage greater use of organic inputs, the use of shade houses, the wider use of drip irrigation, and the introduction of resilient crop systems. This includes providing access to strong, stress-tolerant crop varieties and more nutritious staple foods to prepare for potential climate-related challenges. These interventions aim to boost agricultural yield, decrease soil erosion, improve water quality and quantity, and enhance the income and food security of beneficiaries. I therefore wish every success to this initiative. I'm confident that it coincides with and will contribute to a new era where Africa emerges as a powerhouse in global food production and climate change mitigation. Africa is poised to assume a much larger global footprint in shaping a more resilient and food-secure future for all. Let us, therefore, rally behind the vision of a prosperous and sustainable Africa, leading the way towards a brighter, greener tomorrow. Before I close, I must recognize the brilliant leadership of IICA, the strong leadership of IICA. As a global community, especially in the developing world, we try to build a food ecosystem that is resilient, sustainable, viable, and competitive. IICA has been doing enormous work, and I want to once again recognize the leadership of IICA. I thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a privilege to have you. You've laid out an astonishing vision for the agricultural potential of Africa, as well as laid out the solutions that Africa can employ. We are going to turn now to the people who actually have to take this sacred gift, as the president has called it, soil, and make this reality happen. We're going to turn to Ya Frinkwang Ado, the Deputy Minister for Crops of the nation of Ghana. Is the minister here?
Yes, he is here, Phil. Perhaps
Okay.
you can call him again, please.
Mr. Otto, Honorable Yah Otto, Deputy Minister from Crops of the nation of Ghana. The floor is yours.
You are muted, sir. You are muted. You are muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks a lot for this invitation to the Minister of Food and Agriculture. I am a deputy minister here. I'm in charge of crops, and therefore I'm so linked to the issues we are discussing here. And on behalf of my minister, I say thank you for the invitation. Living Soils Africa Initiative, AGRA, and IICA. This is a wonderful initiative that we appreciate very much in Ghana, and for the invitation to. I always say when I got the invitation, I said, "Wow, this initiative, has started, should have started maybe 20, 30 years ago, but all the same, it is all well and good." We are suffering. Soil health is paramount for sustainable agriculture, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where smallholder farmers rely heavily on their land for livelihoods, with very, very few alternative levels of options. Climate change poses significant challenges to maintain soil health in this region. Exacerbating existing issues such as soil erosion, nutrient depletion, and loss of soil organic matter. And here we are referring to the main agents through which such climate variability destroys soil health include droughts, which lead to soil moisture deficits, reducing microbial activity and nutrient availability, and floods which wash away topsoil and available nutrients through erosion. These key points have been alluded to by previous speakers. So we still have higher temperatures, accelerate decomposition of organic matter, which diminishes soil fertility. Moreover, heat stress negatively impacts soil organisms essential for nutrient cycling, and soil erosion, further compromising soil health. These factors, combined with the high cost of and limited access to credit and improved technologies, limited access to markets, make the smallholder farmer the dominant group of farmers responsible for producing the vast majority of foods in sub-Saharan Africa, vulnerable in agricultural value chains. This translates into decreased productivity and production of crops and livestock in the sub-region, with implications on food and nutrition security. This is particularly critical in the face of increasing population growth and the need to ensure food nutrition security for all, especially for women, children, and other vulnerable groups in the sub-region. The demand for food and other agricultural commodities produced in sub-Saharan Africa increases when demand from other regions of the globe is factored in. Challenges that hinder improved soil health and agricultural development in sub-Saharan Africa must be solved if the potential of various commodity value chains is to be realized. The solution, in our opinion, to these challenges requires a multifaceted approach, including the introduction of climate-smart technologies such as conservation agriculture, soil conservation measures, mechanization, irrigation, use of improved seeds and breeze, and agricultural extension support, as well as improved access to financial services and credit. Fortunately, the government of Ghana, in the effort to ensure food and nutrition for all, improve resilience of farmers to climate variability, and promote agro-industry and subsequently exports, is implementing the second phase of the program called the Planting for Food and Jobs, phase 2. The program provides farmers with smart input credit to be repaid in kind at the end of the cropping cycle. The program improves access of smallholder farmers to drought-tolerant and disease-resistant varieties of prioritized commodities to answer the challenge posed by climate variability. Then access to fertilizers is also improved in the program as farmers receive these on credit at the onset of production cycle. The program promotes irrigated crop production, which is the pivot for all year-round production, a game changer in the predominantly seasonal crop production in Ghana. Farmers are better positioned to meet the challenges posed by climate variability. Access to appropriate mechanization services is an integral part of the PFJ 2.0 program, which will enable farmers to better prepare their soils for food production. With the support of the Agriculture Extension Services, which is integral to the program, the capacity of smallholder farmers to better manage their soils, crops, and livestock using good agricultural practices is enhanced. It is of interest to note that Ghana is divided into two geographical regions, the Northern Savanna Zone and the Southern Tropical Forest Zone. The zone that is critical in terms of soil health is the Northern Savanna Zone, where the Sahara Desert is creeping in so much, and therefore several measures have to be put in place to stop the advancement of the Sahara. And due to that, the surface run of water has cleared every nutrient that we have on the soil. And therefore, this has also increased fertilizer usage in those regions, and has also affected soil health in that region. The government of Ghana is trying so hard to access the appropriate mechanization services for all those farmers in those regions, and then for good agricultural practices to increase soil health. So we believe in shared responsibility, and therefore there is this program that the Minister of Food and Agriculture is working closely with the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources in what has become Green Ghana initiative, where every year millions and millions of tree crop species are planted across the length and breadth of this country. And so far, over 30 million tree varieties have been planted. All this is to check the soil degradation as a result of running water, and also to bring back the forest cover that we once had. In the light of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the South-South Cooperation, the Planting for Food and Jobs is 2 seeks to position Ghana to trade effectively as productivity gains are made, food and nutrition security is achieved, farmers are more resilient, and soils are better managed. By prioritizing soil health and adopting climate-smart agriculture practices, Sub-Saharan Africa can enhance its resilience to climate change while ensuring food security and sustainable livelihoods for millions of smallholder farmers. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much for the opportunity, and we hope to meet in Kenya in a few days' time, so that we have good discussion at the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. You started off by saying a multifaceted approach was needed, and then you laid out some steps, obviously, that your government is taking to address a number of issues, including the encroachment of the Sahara and your northern savanna lands. Very interesting to hear about your tree initiative that you're trying to restore those lands, return them, and regenerate the soils and make your country and your agriculture more resilient. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to Roberto Cerrone Perosa, who is the Secretary of Commerce and International Relations of the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock of Brazil. So we're crossing the ocean. Minister Perosa.
Okay, thank you, Philip. I would like to thank Manuel Otero, our president, and also his team in the name of Jorge. And I will speak in Portuguese. The people told me that I'm allowed to speak in Portuguese. Ok? A agricultura brasileira tem desempenhado um papel crucial na promoção da segurança alimentar
Brazilian
global.
agriculture is key for global food security through the implementation of innovative technologies and sustainable technologies. Many of those technologies come from the creation over 51 years ago of Embrapa, which is the agricultural technology Brazilian company that I have the honor to be part of its council, of its board and institution. And out of those 50 years at Embrapa, Brazil was able to reach such high levels in agriculture. We were a country that used to be importer, and now we're large exporters. This continuous commitment with research and agricultural development had led the support of efficient and sustainable techniques, supporting not only productivity, but also producing or reducing the environmental impact. Agricultural technologies have been true allies for the promotion of health and the quality of our soils. We even use drones to monitor, and we use techniques for soil conservation, among other technologies. It is not only something that would increase productivity, but also they promote the preservation of many natural resources, obviously, including soils. The care of soils is not only an environmental issue, it is also an economic one and a social one. Healthy soils are essential to guarantee food security and sustainable development of agriculture, and that is what Brazil believes on. Furthermore, soil preservation contributes to the mitigation of climate changes with healthy soils because they receive the carbon and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to the atmosphere worldwide. It is important to say that with President Lula, we were given a mandate, a very clear one, in which we have to stimulate exchange of knowledge, particularly in the South-South cooperation. And he invites us, and we were invited to participate in the launching of this initiative, and we're happy to help our African friends with all the technology that Embrapa has and everything that we know about, particularly about soils in the area of high areas, but also those related to the African savannas. I would like to give you two examples from Brazil of Brazilian initiatives that exemplify what we are doing here, and that actions that can be also carried out in Africa. ABC is a low carbon emission in agriculture plan, and also a national plan for the development of degradable pastures in agricultural production and sustainable production. This is an initial project by President Lula that we would like to rescue areas and particularly degraded soils in new agricultural areas, and by potentializing Brazilian production. And with this, we want to also to use our technology and establish partnerships to use these technologies in the African continent as well. Aside from the efforts to promote agricultural sustainability, we need to highlight Brazilians' willingness to share its knowledge and experiences with Africa on this very important topic as soils are. So many African countries face similar problems like the ones we face in terms of agriculture and soil preservation. And we believe in the importance of international cooperation to face these challenges together. in with solidarity. Brazil has 7 officials from the agricultural sector and 4 from the environmental ministry in African soil dedicated to develop these partnerships with our African friends, and we are going to add 3 more people to this team. So we have 7 agricultural attachés distributed in Africa with the African Union to strengthen the international partnerships and support the initiatives for soil recovery. These initiatives, such as the Living Soils Initiative in Africa, are very adequate to share sustainable agricultural practices and technologies that may help African countries in repairing degraded soils and adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. Brazil has lots of experience, and we want to again offer our services to establish these partnerships. Brazil has acted actively in the exchange of knowledge, particularly in what has to do with everything that Embrapa has done in tropical agriculture, and also reinforced with technology exchange and cooperation. Yesterday, we received a representative from the Ivory Coast and from Nigeria not long ago, is to establish possible partnerships in the development of African soils. So to conclude, on behalf of the government of President Lula, I would like to thank the IICA's initiative through his Director General, Manuel Otero, and its entire team for this very important initiative so that we can develop the soil in African countries and guarantee the global food security, guaranteeing peace for all of us. Together, we can build a better future, a sustainable future for all, where agriculture is a driving force for economic and social development without risking the health of our soils and of our planet. We are open and willing to collaborate with African countries in this very important road. So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate with all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Brazil obviously has shown that it is possible to build an agricultural powerhouse, a global agricultural powerhouse, I might say, in a region with soils very much like those in Africa. And you have laid out the intent of the effort that has been launched by President Lula in Africa to make known and to help spread those technologies that have made such a difference and are making such a difference in Brazil as well. Thank you very much for being with us. We are now going to move to our keynote speaker. That is Dr. Ratan Lal. Doesn't need much introduction, I should say. He is, without question, the world's greatest authority on soil sciences. Won the 2020 World Food Prize. Dr. Lal is the director of the Center for Carbon Management and Sequestration at Ohio State University. Welcome, Dr. Lal. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And you could see my slides. Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation. I greatly appreciate the introductions by Dr. Manuel Otero, by President of Guyana, and I immediately following the Minister of Agriculture of Brazil. Excellent presentation, very informative. So building upon these, I would like to mention that how can we recreate the Brazilian Cerrado miracle in Africa? Why? Because Africa has the natural resources needed to create the miracle. Africa should be the next bread basket of the world. And the strategy to achieve this, to translate the proven agronomic soil management science into action. And that action requires policies which are pro-nature, pro-agriculture, and pro-farmer. Therefore, the LICEF initiative being launched today is timely and urgently needed. Dr. Otero also mentioned that perhaps some 300 million years ago, the two continents, Africa and South America, were joined together. And they got separated by several thousand kilometers as of now. So the goal is how to bridge the gap, the physical gap, through science-proven technology and the bridging the gap of agronomic knowledge, translation of practice from one place into another. And that bridge, obviously, IICA is the strong foundation for it. We need partners globally as well as in both continents. And of course, we at Ohio State are privileged and proud to be associated with the IICA in implementing this initiative, which I think is very critical. The key goal is that the traditional system of farming practiced now in Africa is increasing the productivity, but very slowly. What we need is a jump in the productivity, agriculture production, which resources, climate, and knowledge permits, but is not being implemented. And this bridging the gap is through best management practices to be adopted under African setting after validation and evaluation, so that agriculture is important not only for food and nutrition security, but also environmental sustainability. To do this, we have challenges to be addressed. Some of those have been highlighted. Drought, for example. We have a history of drought. We have soil degradation problem, which everybody has mentioned, especially by erosion, mentioned Ethiopian conditions, but also by wind, nutrient mining, negative nutrient budget. Depletion of soil organic carbon has been mentioned, salinization, and many other problems. There is a very rapid urbanization, which of course need to be considered in terms of the food demand of rapidly growing population. And of course, we got problems being aggravated by a serious threat of climate change. These issues can and must be addressed through an initial initiative. I just came back from a meeting of AAA, and now the LICEF working together to address these issues. And one of the things that we should look at is the managing soil health. Managing soil health in Africa, a program called MASHA. And this MASHA program we are trying to develop in Africa now in cooperation with Living Soils Initiative being launched today. The goal of MASHA is restoring soil health of cropland, grazing land, and forest land, reclaiming about 25% of land in sub-Saharan Africa that's already degraded, improving well-being of almost 180 million people who are living on the land that in some way or another is spoiled, degraded, and not producing what it should. And we must reduce of additional soil erosion degradation caused by climate change, deforestation, and other human activity. And we must promote nutrition-sensitive agriculture. It's not just the production alone, it's not just the carbohydrate alone, it's not just the yield alone. The food being produced must be nutritionally rich, dense, so that the malnutrition problem, which is globally in throughout Africa, must be addressed. In this case, managing nutrient depletion is very critical. Global fertilizer use is already about 140 kilograms per hectare. In Africa, as of today, it is at the most average 22 kilograms per hectare. So we have a big gap in nutrient mining. Sub-Saharan Africa has 20% of world's cropland, but it consumes only 2% of the world fertilizer, and this must be rectified. Irrigation in Africa is needed to alleviate drought. We must double the productivity through irrigation, and it is possible. However, only 6 to 7%, I should repeat that number, only 6 to 7% of cropland in Africa, about 13 million hectare, is presently irrigated, compared with 14% in Latin America and almost 40% in South Asia and China. So that's a big drip sub-fertigation that saves water, energy, and fertilizer must be promoted in Africa, everywhere, but especially in Sub-Saharan Africa. Some of the example of nature positive practices already mentioned by many delegates, many ministers, and President Irfan Ali from Ghana: conservation agriculture, regenerative agriculture, agroecology, agroforestry, integration of crops with trees and livestock, practices with positive soil ecosystem carbon budget. Carbon budget must be increased, make positive. We must think about CNPK, carbon putting in the land before NPK. Without carbon adequate amount, the efficiency use of NPK cannot be enough. We must have balanced use of plant nutrients, and not just nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, micronutrient, many macronutrients. We must think about drip fertigation. We should think about digital agriculture, artificial intelligence, robotics. Those are the modern techniques needed for precision agriculture, which is very important to modernize. An example of conservation agriculture, my own experiments in 1971 at IITA in Nigeria. Somehow, the knowledge cannot be translated. It has not been translated for the last more than 50 years. And when you do conservation agriculture, you want to make sure that the crop residue, mulch, is returned back to the land. I know farmers need it for other purposes, such as grazing and feeding cattle. But if the mulch is not returned, this is what happened. These two plots, again, at IIT in Nigeria, the one plot in the foreground, for 15 years continuously, the crop residue was removed. The plot in the back is exactly the same thing, same variety, but the crop residue is returned. It maintains the organic matter content. It conserves soil water. It regulates temperature. More importantly, it's food for microorganisms. Soil biota is the bio-engine of the earth, and residue is its food. Do not starve them, because there is no such thing as a free biofuel. Residue must be returned. We must grow cover crop. Here is an example of my own experiment where Mucuna utilis, beans, which can produce 20 tons of crop residue over a very short period of time and also fix nitrogen. Therefore, the objective of LISOF, Living Soils of Africa program, being launched by IICA with support from everybody, especially us at the Carbon Center, we must enhance soil organic carbon stock for key ecosystem. We must relate carbon stock to agronomic productivity. We should evaluate savings in inputs of fertilizer, irrigation, energy with increase in soil organic carbon stock. We must validate models with ground truthing data. We must develop scaling protocols so that we can scale up the technology. And of course, we must provide training opportunity and identify policies, issues which promote soil health and act as a national at African level, promote soil health. Therefore, the action needed, which I hope we can implement between now and 2030, increase fertilizer use and sufficiency, improve soil health and productivity, increase land area under irrigation, remove CO2 from the atmosphere and sequester it in the soil, and include soil restoration as an integral component of the national regional program. Therefore, we must protect soil under forest and wetland. I know we have a lot of spare land in Africa. Protect it. use existing land properly, do not necessarily bring new land. And one of the things we can do is carbon farming. Just like we grow corn and soybean and cassava and yam and sweet potato, we can also grow carbon in land, in soil, in vegetation, which can create another income stream for farmer. So farmer get income from storing carbon. How much income? It depends on the societal value of carbon, not necessarily the market value of carbon. The societal value of carbon is about 50 tons per credit. One credit is 1 metric ton of CO2. 50 ton. If a 5-acre farmer in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, for example, cultivate practices that we just implemented and secure and store 2 credit of carbon per acre per year, that's $100 for that carbon. So this is how the payment should be. It's based on the societal value, not the market demand and supply. We do not have the market developed yet. Therefore, the society value should be poured. In this regard, the private sector can play a very, very, very important role. They can, for example, help us in promoting nature positive agriculture. They can increase access to input. They can improve investment in agriculture, research, development, and education. Therefore, creating the Cerrado miracle, I must state this with political willpower. We are talking today to excellencies, the ambassador, the minister, the leader, the politician. We need your help to translate science into action. How? By empowering farmers, and most of them are women, through pro-farming policies that Africa needs to become the breadbasket of the world. Africa's food import, somebody mentioned $60 billion. It was $43 billion in 2019, and it may reach $90 billion by 2030. This money should be invested in promoting science-based agriculture, such as through LISOF, rather than importing food. With adoption of improved agriculture, such as that proposed under LISOF and AAA and other, Africa can be, must be, should be self-sufficient for now and future population. And self-reliance in Africa would require validation of technology, and LISOF should be implemented under different ecoregions on transact basis, and a roadmap is needed. And this is an example of what a roadmap should be. For example, the fertilizer use, 17 kilogram per hectare in 2020, 22, 24 kilogram now, should be about 60 kilogram by 2030. Irrigated cropland, 6% now, should be about 20% 2030. Conservation agriculture, only 1.5 million hectare now, should be 50 million hectare by 2030. And agroforestry covering only 10% of the tree cover now should be doubled by this. For this, Mr. Policymakers, we need your support. We need your help. I'm glad you are here. And I hope that when you go back, you will translate these words into action in developing a roadmap, such as an example that I just gave you. And with that, it is definitely possible that Africa will be the breadbasket of the world by producing a range of crops that Africa has, soil types, the climate, the environment. There is no reason why it cannot feed the rest of the world. With knowledge and with the mantra that we don't want to leave any farmer behind. LISOF will not leave any farmer left behind. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. You have laid out quite a challenge for the policymakers that are part of this forum today, and those are all across Africa, potential and the challenge. And you talked about the need for political willpower, and that the policies must be pro-nature, pro-agriculture, and pro-farmers. Thank you very much for being with us. We're now going to turn to Tilahun Umadi, who's the Director for Climate Change, Sustainable Productivity and Resilience for AGRA, the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. He's also the country representative and principal scientist of natural resource management for the International Crops Research Institute for the semi-arid tropics. Director Amadi, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, honorary ministers. Thank you very much for the opportunity and thank you for being here. Unfortunately, my AGRA colleagues, my bosses were not able to talk to you, but we will come again at the end of the event to say thank you. And I would like to really share the sentiment and the presentations made by the previous speakers, particularly His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Ali, really, who talked about African issues in a very detailed manner, and really grateful for that understanding. So I think that the first thing, I hope I'm not going to repeat what other colleagues have said. The first really challenge that we need to accept is, soil health crisis in Africa is very, very apparent. As it was already mentioned by Professor Lal, it is caused by multiple factors. Nutrient mining be one, land degradation, and loss of free biodiversity because of soil health depletion. All that has an impact not only on productivity, but also on biodiversity, and health. Malnutrition is very apparent. So it has cascaded effects. And how do we really reverse it back is the situation? I think there is a very fundamental thing we need to agree on. Regardless of the source of nutrients, I think the world has been transformed in terms of food security because of nitrogen use and supply. In the earlier days, it used to come from fertilizers, mineral fertilizers. But in Africa, it's lacking. In fact, we are trying to feed our people by expanding land. If you compare the last 60, 70 years, the global trade in agriculture, North America, European Union, in fact, they reduced the amount of land they use for agriculture, while at the same time, they're feeding almost 3 times more people. While in Africa, the growing population is fed by increasing land area. So it's really an expansion to forests, to marshlands, protected areas, fragile systems. And this cannot continue. And that is where really we need a sustainable, regenerative, and intensified system. If you, dive into countries, have the example of Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Ghana, you could see that, food production has increased in the last 6 years significantly, but largely through land expansion, except probably a bit for Ethiopia, where about 80% of land area has brought in about 140% more food, while in other places, almost 1-to-1. So really, this cannot continue. And most of the food demand in the 2050 and beyond, cannot come from land expansion. It should come from sustainable systems whereby we produce more food per unit of land, per unit of investment. And when you talk about really fertilizer use, it's not only solutions. This is a slide from multiple locations within Ethiopia. Same amount of fertilizer, same type of variety, almost a similar location. You see multiple and variable systems. Some systems are benefiting, like tripling here. Other systems, you don't see any change. Other systems are already high yielding, and the issue is how do you sustain it? So really appreciating diversity within Africa is becoming a very important process. And, there has been already an initiative in Africa to really address those issues since the year 2006, what we call the Abuja Declaration, where African states came together to really address soil issues that time through increasing fertilizer use, moving from 8 to 50 kilograms per hectare. Although, that initiative had multiple benefits in terms of policy. One, really recognizing soil as a very important finite resource in many countries. We have seen improvements in investment in local fertilizer manufacturing. In some countries, there's an increased use of fertilizer. Digital is coming to support extension. We see also an improved alignment between the public and the private sector. So there are few developments we have made in the last 20 years. But there are so many challenges that needs to be addressed in the African continent. One, of course, is, crop yields, productivity is stagnated. We are still a 1.5 ton agriculture, and that cannot continue. And it's partly because of, again, limited use of critical nutrients. And the challenge, of course, is the affordability, the availability, but also the targeting and the policy. We are still over dependence on imported nutrients. Whenever small shock comes, like the Ukraine-Russian conflict, an immediate impact was at a decline, even with a small amount of fertilizers used. Low use efficiency, low nutrient use efficiency, and that, of course, causing again their expansion and exposing farmers to climate change. All these are interrelated challenges that we need to address. And most importantly, the knowledge available, be it in the CGIAR Center or in countries like Brazil, are not yet cascaded down to farmers because of a very poor last mile delivery system, a very weak extension, which doesn't consider context, but also very limited physical presence. So a farmer to extension ratio is very, very high. So really we have challenges, and these challenges have been recognized in Africa. And next week, starting from Monday, the second African Soil Health Summit is happening after 20 years. It's really meant to address these emerging challenges that we have been exposed to in the last decades. So one challenge, of course, is really making sure that we have an input financing mechanism, capital being a major shortage, and supporting local manufacturing of both inorganic and organic sources to help farmers to adapt to climate change at the same time improve productivity. Needed also investment is in terms of land rehabilitation, soil health management beyond a farm at a scale. And at the same time, as Professor Lal indicated, really increasing the use of nutrients, at least tripling them, by 2030. And all along this has to go with stronger institutional capacity building and making sure that we really protect the existing landscapes that have patches of resources of trees. So through agroforestry systems, enriching them, improving upstream, downstream relationships. All that hope is that then this will not only double productivity, but also protect farmers from extreme events like climate change. So this, of course, would also help farmers, particularly the African youth, to get job opportunities. So it could create pathways for employment, be it from the production sector, be it also from the trading, agro dealership, from agro services, the sourcing of nutrients, line production, distribution, but also relocation and productivity, enhancing value chains. So all these are opportunities to support Africa. And really we see the South-South collaboration between Africa and the Inter-American agencies would be very critical, learning from each other, but also making sure that really we embark on the opportunities that African leaders are creating next week and help them to implement some of the implementation plans and declarations. Back to you, sir. Thank you. I think you are muted. You are muted.
Philip.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Amade. You have laid out the challenge of what we sometimes call sustainable intensification, obviously increasing production substantially off existing lands through increased use and better use of fertilizers, better extension as well. Thank you for bringing up that issue, which has long been a challenge in terms of just getting the technology out to the farmers who need to use it. We're now going to turn to Dr. Manuel Mutamba, the head of agriculture for the African Union Development Agency, an accomplished expert in agri-food systems and climate change. Dr. Mutamba?
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, moderator, for the introduction. Excellencies, the honorable ministers here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask for your indulgence for me to stand on existing protocols in the interest of time. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to say a few remarks, particularly focusing on the potential and some of the steps that we have taken as a continent with respect to, addressing the challenges that have been clearly outlined by many presenters before me. It is indeed a crisis that
we lost you.
You have frozen up. Give him a minute.
My apologies.
Okay.
It looks like
okay. There you are.
It looks like my link went down for a moment there. Yes, I was saying that the crisis that we face as a continent really require us to step up as a continent and utilize the tools that we have at our disposal to really tackle this challenge head on. And I am glad to say at this point in time, it has become clear to the continent, and I can refer to the statements from honorable ministers that spoke before me. It is clear that the continent is taking the soil health crisis very seriously, and indeed it is time for that issue to be elevated to the highest political level on the continent. The Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit coming up next week is really an expression of that urgency and an expression of the need for the continent to really pull together and put its resources to turning around, the soil health crisis, because it has become clear that there is not going to be a food systems transformation on the continent until and unless we address the challenges related to soil health. Many speakers before me have clearly outlined, the challenges that we face as a continent. And as we were preparing for the summit, we were leading a technical working group that really also tried to get to the bottom of the challenges that we face as a continent. And many of the issues that were raised today were part of informing, the thought process and some of the proposals that we put together and we are presenting next week to the heads of states for consideration particularly with respect to an action plan that should lead us, that should be a roadmap for the continent to respond, and to respond in a coherent manner, in a coordinated manner to the challenges that we face as a continent. I want to focus particularly on policy aspects that we really feel provide an opportunity for the continent to really move forward with respect to turning the challenges that we have into the kinds of actions and the kinds of investments that are required to drive the change that we want to see. So we really dwelled on policy options as one of the major drivers of how you can move from addressing challenges to the kind of actions, investments that you require. And we, you know, as I was listening today, I could already see that there's a lot to be done to refine that and to get better at that. There were examples in terms of how you could, lean on policy instruments to really move, our investments and our decision making in the right direction. So although the current action plan that has really been put in front of heads of state is really a guide for our member states, it's not a prescription. It allows, ideas. It allows refinement at the national level, at the regional level, to really look at, what the context requires. Some of the examples in terms of the areas that we really picked, within the action plan that is going to be put on, to the member states next week are really around, the force of the influence of policy on harmonization to improve efficiencies. We had, Prof. Lau, we had Dr. Tilao talking about efficiencies with respect to fertilizer use, with respect to movement of products across borders, with respect to trade, with respect to capacity that we have on the continent, in the regions, with respect to infrastructure, with respect to the way we deploy our regulatory frameworks. We really feel policy could, drive harmonization of across all those facets, to really, drive us, some way across a number of those aspects. With respect to driving incentives, we outlined examples in terms of, how we could have policy, related instruments driving incentives for soil health, positive investments by the private sector, by farmers, by different players within the agri-food, landscape. We looked at examples that could apply in different situations. And we, really found that there is a lot of scope, there's a lot of room to influence key decisions, to influence procurement, for example, within state systems, to encourage local production of foods, indigenous foods, policies to influence financing mechanisms, areas that really, open up a whole lot of possibilities. There are policies for de-risking investments, particularly for vulnerable groups, for farmers, for startups, for, to unleash innovation, basically, to support domestic production of key products, that are important for addressing, soil health issues, so particularly when you look at, targeting groups and strengthening research support for innovation generally, key services, we spoke about soil sampling, testing, soil information systems, quality standards for key products. There's a lot of potential for us to really, promote good practice. We spoke about integrated soil fertility management, regenerative practices, including repurposing existing policy instruments to really drive redirecting of resources towards soil health positive, practices. We know that currently we already have frameworks for these that we could redirect, we could work with, we could remodel. There is a huge amount of potential to look at how to direct, investments in densifying, commodities, the diversification of production systems. Let me, conclude by saying, some of the presentations today really opened my eyes, in terms of the possibilities and the extent to which we can go at different levels, utilizing the instruments that we have as a continent. And going forward, as we go post-summit, these would really galvanize how we are going to approach, this challenge and support member states with the right instruments, with the right decision-making and investments to really, drive the change that we want to see. Thank you, moderator. Sorry for taking a bit more time, but, I thought that would be a quick, outline of what we think would be possibilities coming from the summit next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Matamba. Thank you, Dr. Matamba. We will be watching. I certainly will be eager to see what comes out in terms of the action plan for that summit this week or next week. You talked, just want to highlight, you talked about the need for incentives, policies for de-risking investments and other changes. That's an issue that's been brought up before in terms of the need for policymakers to act to get these changes made. Next, we're going to turn to Zelia Manete, who is the Director General of the Agricultural Research Institute of Mozambique. She has 35 years of experience in research and development with governments, organizations, and national and international agencies. Dr. Manete.
Thank you for having me. I want to recognize all the excellencies. It's wonderful that in this initiative we have the political support that we need, and then also we have the support of all these institutions, research institutions from different parts of the world, and also all the practitioners that are participating here. So thank you very much for having me. And Professor Lal, I have learned a lot of soil scientists. I'm a soil scientist by training. I'm a PhD in soil and water management from Wageningen, and then PhD from Cornell. And then I learned a lot from your books and textbooks. So thank you so much for helping the new generation, like myself and others, to grasp the intricate relationship in soil and water management. Thank you so much. So they asked me to talk about research, the role of research. Of course, we know research, without research, we cannot have technologies. If we don't have technologies, we cannot have innovation. If we don't have innovation, then we don't have impact. We don't have adoption of technologies. So I think I don't have to say much. The importance of us studying the relationship between soil, plants, and water for us to manage practices that improve the productivity of the soil, so that we have more production, more productivity of the crop that are the one that are of interest in terms of reducing hunger and then improving the food security and nutrition. So we are talking about the soil because it's very important for us to be able to provide food for everyone. And as Professor Lal said, not leaving anyone behind. The SDGs, we are now in 2024. We are only 6 years from all the targets that the SDGs have compromised, and one of the targets is really a zero hunger, and also poverty. So going in terms of the research gaps that we need, I want first to say the National Agricultural Research Institute in Mozambique has more around 30 experimental stations, but we work in collaboration with other government institutions, and then we work in collaboration with other CGRs. We work in collaboration with the higher education institution in terms of doing the research, in terms of training, and also to collaborate with extension personnel in terms of taking the research results to the end user, whether they are farmers, whether they are industry, whether they are companies that produce seeds and others. So what are we focusing on in terms of soil fertility? Thank God I'm a soil scientist, and then I focus a lot on soil health. I think soil health is important. In Mozambique, other speakers before me, they talked about the issues in Ethiopia, Ghana, and others. They are very similar. Because we face in Mozambique challenges in relation to soil erosion, soil mining and depletion, soil salinity and solidification. We face challenges in relation to physical degradation, loss of soil organic matter, soil acidification, loss of bases through the leaching, because we have very poor, we have very old rocks and we have very old soils. And also in relation to soil, there is this interplay between soil and water management. So we need to conserve the soil and then also look at water harvesting as the resources in terms of water resources also going to dwindle for us to be able to produce better yields. We need good quality seeds, but that depends on the breeding. But we also need fertilizer, whether organic or inorganic, but we also need irrigation. As the climate change is impacting us, we have less and less water in Mozambique because we are always hit by extreme climate events, cyclones and others. We also experience drought and floods. So it's very, very, very important for us to be able to look at soil health, but also look at water management to improve the efficient use of the little water resources that we have. So when we talk about importance, it's really like the soil is a living organism. Some people look at soil, they think it's a dead organism, but it's a living organism. And then we have to look at the chemical aspect. But one of the research gaps that I want to start talking is that we really don't understand the role of the microfauna, the microflora of the soil in all the decomposition of organic matter, but also all the metabolic equation that happen in the soil to make sure that the soil provide the nutrients that are necessary for the plants to grow. So that's one of the research gaps I think we need to look at in terms of research. And then also soil and water management interaction to make sure that we have best practices that improve those interactions and also improve the water use efficiency. But apart from that, it's also the interplay between soil and water and plant interactions, so that all we do in terms of the soil reservoir and the water, what we are trying to do is research to be able to have technology for us to be able to have a healthy plant that actually produces a lot, and the productivity of these plants is very good. But I have had a lot of panelists here that presented a lot of experiences. But one of the things is that we all do this with farmers. And then in Mozambique, the importance of smallholder farmers is very high in terms of plant production. And then so I want to, on complement of what was said, is that we have to invest in indigenous knowledge and best practice that local community and farmers already have. We have to be able to recognize those indigenous practices. We have to be able to map those local practices and see what are the best practices that actually we can scale up to be able to have, to complement whatever scientific knowledge coming from elsewhere. So in face of the climate change, we have to invest in the climate smart agriculture. We have to be able to have research that is responsive to that, so that it gives us adaptive practices that will make our soils more resilient to degradation. But not only that, our soil will be able to allow us to produce more and more to provide for the growing population. As I said, the water resources are diminishing. So we need to find practices. In our research, we need to find practices that increase the efficiency of the use of water and nutrients for the plants. But we are not going to be able to do that if we are not going to manage to map and update the current status of the soil health in Mozambique, in our continent, because it's always changing. It is dynamic. So we need to map. And then also because different countries, different continents face different challenges, like in Europe, in Asia and others. During the Green Revolution, there was a lot of application of fertilizer and other inputs. But in Africa, especially in Mozambique, we haven't really used, like the current use of fertilizer, organic and inorganic, is very low, less than 10%. So we need to improve information, dissemination, and communication of current status of soil, because there are people who think if you do organic agriculture, then you are more environmentally sound. Not always, because the crop is extracting nutrients from the soil, and then we have to be able to have the correct nutrient balance to be able to provide nutrients, so we are not depleting the soil. So not always organic agriculture or conservation agriculture. It is important, but we have to see case by case what is the integrated management of nutrients in the soil, what is the integrated pest management in the soil, what it is that we have to do in terms of managing the soil tillage. So the mechanization that we are using, there is a strong mechanization program in Mozambique, but we have to make sure with all these tractors and all these strong farm machinery, we are not degrading the physical characteristic of the soil. I had a lot of my previous colleagues in the panel talking about agroforestry, cover crops, so I'm not going to go there because it was all said. In Mozambique, we have a strong program in terms of conservation agriculture, also increase the fertilizer use, whether it's organic or inorganic, but also production of different blends of fertilizer in country, because most of the time the fertilizer inorganic fertilizer used to be imported, but now there is a very big focus in terms of producing new blends of fertilizer, but also using the natural occurrence of phosphate and calcareum that is readily available locally to be able to amend the soil. Because sometimes it's not about increasing nutrient, but it's about the correction of pH So when the soil is acidic, with calcareum, we can improve a lot, and then we improve the availability of nutrients. So Professor Lal talked about drought and floods. Yes, it's a recurrent event in Mozambique, rapid urbanization, deforestation, and then we need to reclaim those degraded soils. So we have to find strategy on research, how to reclaim those soils that are already acidic, those are already nutrient depleted, and so on. So we also talk about nutrition smart crops. What we do at IIM, which is the National Agricultural Research Institute, is also breeding to improve productivity of, for instance, maize. We are breeding maize that is more tolerant to pest and disease and to droughts. And then we're also breeding for crops that are rich in vitamin A. So that provitamin A will help those sweet potato will help to provide for carbohydrate, but at the same time providing for vitamin A. We are breeding for beans that are rich in iron, so that we also amend or we provide iron for anemia and other diseases that are there. So we talked about carbon budget and micronutrients. I think a lot needs to be done in terms of microfauna, understand better the macrofauna, but also the role of macronutrients. We know some of it, but sometimes for the different agroecological zone of Mozambique, we are still doing research for that. And then we talked about precision agriculture. But I want to say all these things will only be possible if we invest on human capacity. For Mozambique, we have very few specialists, and then I think we need in soil health to invest also in training scientists that are specialized in soil health, in different components, smart climate agriculture, but also at a different level. We have a national level. The country is very big. We have provincial and district level, and then we need to be able to devise a system to train also the extension personnel, the provincial people, so that we are very much closer to the end user, more farmers and industry. So I don't want, we have been discussing we have had different panelists. I don't want to repeat what they have said, but I want to say for Mozambique, we have specific issues in specific agroecological zones, and that we need research and collaboration with Brazil and others to be able to divide specific practices for us to be able to mitigate and to have adaptive measures and best practice that are actually very good for soil health. But I want to emphasize the dissemination and communication to the end users for us to be make a transformation. We need to have a movement where different researchers, politicians, everybody, private sector, go hand in hand to reduce to improve soil health and increase productivity, so that we have food for all and not leave anyone behind. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maneda. That's a great charge to end on. Thank you for telling us what the need to take for research that creates technology and addresses the challenges that we have seen or heard laid out in detail today. For some brief closing remarks from our final presenter from the private sector, we have Mildred Pita, the head of Global Healthcare Programs and Sustainability in Middle Africa at Bayer.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me very well. Yes, again,
thank you.
Yes, greetings from very rainy Nairobi. So I do hope that the internet connection is stable enough and I'll be able to share with you just a few thoughts. So again, my name is Mildred Peter. I head the Public Affairs, Science and Sustainability for Bayer for Africa. Just to make that quick correction. And really honorable, I don't know if His Excellency, the President of Guyana is still on the call, just so that at least I respect the protocols, excellencies, ministers, heads of governments that are on this call, heads of institutions. Dr. Otero was here earlier. Really, thank you again for always this great partnership with Bayer, and of course Dr. Rata Lal with his team at Ohio State. So I wanted first to congratulate AGRA and IICA for this great initiatives to see that this is coming. The living soil is also coming to Africa at a very opportune time. I think the governments that have spoken today have clearly articulated why it is now, why it is necessary for Africa's agricultural future, why it is necessary for Africa's economic even growth, looking at the impact that agricultural importation has on the economies of countries. So I work for Bayer. Bayer is a global leader company in agriculture. And we have worked very closely with IICA and the University of Ohio in the Living Soils America project. And I thought perhaps it would be good to kind of give just a little overview on why the Africa Initiative is something that we're particularly excited about and really looking forward to collaborating on. So the Living Soils of America has sought really to foster a collaboration amongst various stakeholders that has included governments, ministries of agriculture across Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, many other countries, but also the private sector, like us, farmers, scientists, civil societies, organizations around, to implement soil conservation and restoration efforts. And by promoting those sustainable soil management practices, the initiative has improved soil health, has enhanced agricultural productivity in these countries, and has mitigated the effects of environmental degradation. Bayer stands really, again, as a key supporter of the Living Soils of America initiatives, which, led by IICA, and the Carbon Management Sequestration Center, led, of course, by Dr. Lal, who clearly outlined what Africa's view would be. But for the Americas, the initiative was particularly interesting for us because it was founded on certain core principles that as a company, we also believed in. You would allow me to just name maybe three. One, of course, was the adoption of regenerative agriculture practices to improve soil health. Secondly, how do you measure and capture the value of carbon in agriculture to help producers in understanding and reducing carbon emissions? And then thirdly, the establishment of those robust public policies and sustainable agricultural practices that have been able to allow the Americas really to improve the agricultural productivities. So Bayer's partnership with IICA in this initiative has yielded significant outcomes, particularly in quantifying carbon sequestration through these good agricultural practices. And it aligns with the Pro-Carbon Initiative that was introduced by Bayer that has engaged over 2,000 producers, providing tools and knowledge to promote sustainable production and reduce the environmental impact of some of these agricultural practices. But this not only benefits individual farmers, but also contributes to preserving natural resources and mitigating climate change on a global scale. Hence, when Dr. Lal was making his presentation, I was really excited to see that the same framework was also being brought into the continent, but even more taken into cognizance the native vegetation perhaps that we have on the continent. I looked at the map and the pictures that he placed on the crops were very intentional, that if we could promote the indigenous crops, yes, but how else can we also increase agricultural productivity across the continent generally? So for us, Bayer has been promoting sustainable regenerative agricultural practices on the continent. Currently, we're working across the continent with over 10 million smallholder farmers. We not only work with small-scale farmers, we're also working with commercial smallholder farmers, just to ensure that we're bringing in those sustainable agricultural practices such as no-till farming, crop rotation, cover crops, and just ensuring that we're helping farmers taking the firm steps towards decarbonizing agriculture, protecting soil health, which is a crucial resource for agricultural productivity and for food security globally, but especially for us on the continent. So participating in these initiatives would really facilitate, we believe, in information sharing, skills and capacity development, teamwork, and connectivity amongst various stakeholders that will result really in improved strategies for climate resilient agricultural practices that will be tailored to the African continent. Overall, involvement in this initiative represents a proactive steps for us towards addressing the complex challenges facing African agriculture, which simultaneously aiding broader efforts aimed at achieving sustainable development and resilience against the impacts of climate change. I mentioned earlier that it's raining currently in Kenya, floods. Earlier in the year, we had seen drought in countries like Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in Zambia. So climate change is impacting agriculture as we speak. How do we ensure that we bring in all the different capacities? I loved what Dr. Otero said. We said our collective competencies to be able to address not only the challenges of soil health, but agriculture in general on the continent. So Bayer recognizes the pivotal role that the private sector support will bring in partnering with farmers, in partnering with policymakers, and the scientific community to adopt the practices that combat climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and enhancing carbon sequestration, because we understand that soils play a vital role in ensuring food and environmental security, underscoring the importance of concerted efforts in this regard. We really look forward in continuing partnership with IICA and to support initiatives as the Living Soil of Africa that will directly contribute to regenerative agricultural outcomes that will help in closing yield gaps, improving farmers' livelihoods in and around the continent. We really look for opportunities to continue to engage. And again, thank you for always including us. Thank you for the continuous partnership. And I will beg to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred, for outlining the part that Bayer plans to take on in this, and is taking on in this challenge. Just to wrap up, we'll turn to our sponsors from AGRA and IICA. First of all, from AGRA, Jean-Jacques Muhinda. He is a regional head for East Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Philip. Good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you based currently. Your Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers from both Latin America and Caribbean, but also from Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Allow me, first of all, again, to convey excuses from our President, Dr. Agnes Kalibata. She's one of those people that have been affected from internet connection point of view today in Nairobi with what is going on with floods and landslide and so on. It's exactly the same problem our Vice President also, Professor Boga, faced. So there's a blackout. I'm glad that I'm calling from Maputo, where the situation looks like safe for the time being. So that said, I really want to thank you all for joining this very crucial gathering. And as my colleagues said, the imperative of this particular initiative on living soils has never been clearer and important ever than before. As AGRA, together with the IICA, we all underline a shared commitment to actually revitalizing our soil as a foundation upon which the entire agricultural system rests, like Professor Lal and even Tilahun mentioned. On a personal note, I'm really, really happy today, considering that this is one of the flagship initiatives for the South-South cooperation that we identified in Costa Rica during the joint ministerial meeting in 2022. I'm glad that it is finally happening. A few words probably as we close. I'm aware that we're running out of time. I just want also to emphasize the fact that our continent is definitely facing both environmental and economic challenges that are threatening agricultural productivity. We are just talking about the heavy rains going on in East Africa. At the same time, in Southern African countries, like colleagues have already mentioned, there are serious drought and even extreme heat that is affecting production systems and even cropping season this year. So therefore, all our farmers are getting exposed and battling with extreme climate shocks, which definitely gives another good reason for us to advance an initiative like this. So in response, this particular initiative here in Africa emerges not just as a solution, but also as a vital strategy for the future of our continent. This initiative is not about, is actually even more about, is about more than just agriculture. It's about building a resilient food systems that supports farmers' livelihood, but also enhances biodiversity, and again, fosters ecosystem services like previous speakers have just mentioned. So therefore, I want just to highlight 4 points, and I stop there for the interest of time. Number one, by focusing on soil health, we are actually directly enhancing agricultural productivity. I think even the DG for IAM has just mentioned that soil health leads to higher yields, better quality crops, which means improving income of our own farmers, and therefore even strengthening the economic performance for our countries. It's not a rocket science. Number two, this particular initiative here, also speaks to the ecosystem restoration and climate adaptation. Through practices such as cover crops, organic amendment, and many others that have been mentioned here, we actually reduce erosion, we even improve water retention. So all these efforts, therefore, not only mitigate the effect of climate change, but also enhance our landscape and nature and natural resilience. Point number two, we cannot overlook the critical connection between soil health and human nutrition, especially in the context of Africa. Therefore, enriching our soils with essential micronutrients like zinc, calcium, means definitely more nutritious crops and even healthier population. Number three, enhancing soil health means definitely supporting a biodiverse environment. Healthy soils, as we know, foster a rich web of life, both above and also below the ground, therefore creating an ecosystem that are both productive and sustainable. So to realize this benefit, we must definitely strengthen our technical and research capabilities, like it has just been mentioned, but also supporting our institutions and leveraging on best practice and experiences that are happening elsewhere. That is exactly the essence of the South-South cooperation we've been talking about in partnership with the IICA between the countries in Africa and the countries in Latin America and Caribbean. So this initiative, therefore, as I conclude, will be more than a platform for sharing knowledge. It is going to continue supporting and forging partnerships, but also framing policies that prioritize soil health, but one of the action. Again, as mentioned by the colleague from the AUDA NEPAD, it is very timely. Next week, we're all convening in Nairobi to discuss about a next multi-year roadmap for Africa fertilizer and soil health. So we can't get better input that the discussion that are happening in this launch event today. Therefore, through our South-South cooperation, we can transform challenges into opportunities and create prosperous future for the African agriculture. My president, the president of AGRA, and the whole institution were actually committed to continue facilitating this process of dialogue and even multilateral and bilateral collaboration between Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean through our partnership with the IICA. I therefore conclude by saying that the health of our soil is actually the pulse of our planet. As you know, Dr. Agnes Kalibata has been leading the UN food systems conversation globally. So she understands this well. We all understand this well. And the reason for which AGRA is actually leading and supporting our countries, that is our mandate. Our mandate is not a program for AGRA. It's a program for our countries. And we will continue supporting, working with our ministers here to make sure that this program, this initiative is also implemented in the continent, learning from the experience from Brazil and other countries in Latin America. I therefore conclude by calling everyone to continue working together, learn from each other, and actually to build a sustainable, resilient, and more secure food system for our both continents. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And once again, sincere apologies on behalf of Dr. Agnes Kalibata. I thank you very much, Philip.
Thank you, Dr. Mahinda, and no need for apologies. And now finally to send us off with these challenges that before us is Dr. Jorge Wertheim, the Special Advisor to the IICA Director General.
You are in mute, Jorge.
Jorge, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. We are very happy. We are very happy to have all of you. We are very happy with the high attendance that AGRA and IICA were able to achieve. We are very happy with the discussions, the presentation of our dear friend and partner, Ratan Lal, the presentation of Tilahun and all the others that really brought a lot of light, interest, and deep concern about the importance of this Living Soil initiative and the timely of this initiative to be launched today, particularly thinking, as JJ were mentioning before, the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health that is going to take place, this summit that is going to take place May 7 to 9, and in Nairobi. And this was one of the reasons of agreeing with AGRA to launch this initiative today, to bring also this launching to that important forum, to see how we can move together and how the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit can also have the support of this part of the region, clearly the South-South cooperation in action. Thank you very much for the presence of the private sector represented by Bayer, which is, as Milfred was saying, a very long-standing partner with whom we are working very intensively, and that we know, and Mildred expressed that Bayer is going to be and continues engaged in the Living Soils initiative, this time supporting this Living Soils initiative in Africa. And this is the true with other private institutions which we approach and we explain the impact and goal of this initiative, and they commit themselves that they really want to be part of that. But also here today we have a very strong political support, not only the technical importance of the initiative, but also the political support for the initiative, and also looking at the importance of having two continents, Africa and the Americas, trying to work together. And as I was explaining to us, that bridge, the importance of that bridge at bridging these differences in terms of distance, but so many things that we have in common. And when we are talking about the South-South cooperation, we are talking about how also can we learn for the experience that the African countries have and they are facing, and how important this can be to illuminate and guide many of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Director General want to have a very objective and quick results and actions from this initiative. And this is why he pushed us as well, and as I know that Agnes Kalibata pushed her colleagues in Agra to really go ahead and try to get the support that we needed. And everybody talked about the importance of the financial support to help the African countries and the Latin American countries in this South-South cooperation. And the IICA is going to implement a quick initiative allocating some seed resources, financial resources, to start supporting this initiative and the first steps that we discussed previously with Tilahun and with Professor Ratan Lal. And those initially $50,000 that we are going to apply will serve only to provoke basically all the other partners to come on board and to support this initiative. Also, the DG is asking Fontagro, which is a special program that exists in the region where IDB, Inter-American Development Bank, and IICA are partners, to analyze the possibility of financing one project, of which is this Living Soils Initiative project, that will be the first thinking about Africa and the region. Finally, African colleagues, you saw a private company like Bayer, who works intensively in Africa, but also in Latin America and the Caribbean. You saw a country like Brazil, so important politically and technically, supporting this initiative and putting all their weight in making this Living Soils Initiative for Africa a reality and a success. And you saw also a regional organization like IICA, with 34 country members in the Americas, US, Canada, Latin America, and the Caribbean, organizing jointly with AGRA this initiative and putting also whatever resources, technically and financially, we can get to start working with the colleagues and the African countries right away. Then I finish in saying, in the name of the Director General Manuel Otero, who remains in Honduras without connection, he was trying, but finally the connection was cut. Thanking all of you for being here today, for the tremendous success of this meeting, for the results, for the discussions, and very much thank you all the colleagues from AGRA and from IICA that make this event possible. Philip, particularly to you, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you as a moderator. It's important that you are part of this initiative, and I hope that you will remain working with us in this important initiative that we are launching today. Thank you to all. Thank you very much.
Well, it's been a tremendous privilege to be part of this conversation, and I look forward to joining you as in further conversation as this initiative carries forward. And again, thank you to everyone who participated in this, all the distinguished scientists, President Ali, and the many ministers of agriculture across Africa and Brazil. Thank you again. And wherever you are, good afternoon and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, President of Guyana.
It will be next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.